a single coin, small, ordinary, yet once powerful enough to feed armies, build cities, and hold an empire together. Now, it's worthless. Rome, the greatest empire the world had ever known, didn't die with a sword in its heart. It starved, slowly, from within. Not from enemies, but from its own money. How could the wealthiest civilization on earth end up bankrupt? How could gold and silver, the foundation of Roman power, turn into mere metal? This is the story of how trust collapsed before the walls did, and how an empire's currency became its coffin. Long before the fall, the Roman denarius was more than just a coin. It was a promise. A small silver disc stamped with the emperor's face, it symbolized strength, stability, and order. From the bustling markets of Rome to distant outposts in Britain and Syria, everyone trusted that silver piece. It was, in many ways, the internet of its age, a system connecting millions through shared belief. As long as that belief held, Rome could fund armies, conquer lands, and build roads that stitched continents together. The secret of Rome's dominance wasn't just legions or law, it was confidence. And confidence is fragile. Every empire, ancient or modern, builds its power on something invisible: trust in value. Once that trust erodes, everything else begins to shake. For centuries, conquest fed the Roman machine. Gold from Egypt, silver from Spain, tribute from provinces, endless resources flowed to the capital. But empires are expensive to run. By the 2nd century CE, Rome's borders stretched from the deserts of Arabia to the forests of Germany. Millions of soldiers needed pay. Forts needed supplies. Cities demanded grain, games, and roads. Under emperors like Trajan and Hadrian, expansion brought immense riches, but also immense cost. And when the conquests slowed, the money stopped flowing in. Taxes could not cover the empire's appetite. So Rome turned to a solution that seemed simple and deadly. They began to print money, Roman style. The Emperor Nero, often remembered for his cruelty, was also Rome's first economic manipulator. To fund his ambitions, he reduced the silver content in the denarius from nearly 100% pure silver to about 90%. 10% may sound small, but it was the beginning of a slow poison. By making each coin contain less silver, Nero could mint more coins without finding new mines. It was, effectively, an ancient version of creating money from nothing. The problem? People noticed. Merchants began demanding more coins for the same goods. Soldiers demanded higher pay. Inflation was born, subtle at first, then growing like wildfire. Each new emperor found the treasury emptier than before, and the temptation greater. So they debased the coinage further. By the time of Emperor Septimius Severus in the 3rd century, the denarius was less than 50% silver. By the end of that century, it was only 2%. The rest, worthless metal. Rome's money had lost its soul. The 3rd century was chaos. In just 50 years, Rome had 26 emperors, most of whom were assassinated. The economy collapsed alongside political order. As coins lost value, people stopped accepting them. Farmers refused to sell grain for useless money. Soldiers extorted what they needed directly from towns. Trade vanished. Inflation reached nightmare levels. Prices rose faster than coins could be minted. The historian Dio Cassius wrote of soldiers being paid sacks of coins that could buy nothing. Trust, the invisible glue of the empire, had disintegrated. To survive, Rome began paying soldiers and bureaucrats in goods instead of currency. Grain, oil, clothing. Money, as an idea, had died. In 284 CE, Emperor Diocletian seized power amid the chaos. He was a soldier, not a philosopher, practical, ruthless, and desperate to save the empire. His solution was massive reform. He divided the empire into smaller administrative zones, introduced a new tax system, and, most famously, tried to freeze the economy. In 301 CE, Diocletian issued the Edict on Maximum Prices, one of history's first attempts to control inflation. It fixed the price of everything: wheat, wine, labor, even freight rates. Breaking the law could mean death. But reality doesn't obey decrees. Markets went underground, goods disappeared, farmers hid crops instead of selling them. The black market flourished, and Diocletian's economic miracle collapsed almost instantly. Worse, the empire now relied on barter and corruption. Officials demanded bribes in goods rather than coins. Taxes were collected in livestock and grain. Rome's economy had regressed by centuries, from a money-based empire to a feudal patchwork of survival. When money collapses, hierarchy follows. Without a functioning currency, trade routes fell silent. Cities shrank as people fled to the countryside. Artisans and merchants disappeared, replaced by local lords who ruled by force. The once bustling economy of Rome became a chain of self-sufficient estates, early versions of medieval feudalism. The middle class, the engine of Roman innovation, was wiped out. As trust in currency died, so did trust in government. Taxes went unpaid. Soldiers deserted. The empire's core, its sense of unity, evaporated. Rome had survived invasions before, but it could not survive disbelief. When citizens no longer believed their emperor's coin held value, they no longer believed their empire did either. And so, when the Visigoths sacked Rome in 410 CE, it wasn't the beginning of the end. It was the final symptom of a long, invisible collapse. After Diocletian, Emperor Constantine tried again. He introduced the solidus, a new gold coin designed to restore faith. For a time it worked. The solidus became one of history's most stable currencies, so reliable that it remained in use for over 700 years, even in Byzantium. But it couldn't fix the underlying disease. Rome's economy was still built on conquest, bureaucracy, and privilege. When expansion stopped, taxation devoured the heart of the empire. Peasants fled land they could no longer afford to farm. Officials squeezed provinces to feed the military. Even the gold solidus couldn't hold back centuries of structural rot. Rome's economic reforms treated the symptoms, not the cause: the loss of productive balance between state and citizen. By the 5th century, Western Rome was barely an empire. The treasury was empty. Armies were unpaid. Borders dissolved. Local governors ruled as kings. Roads decayed. Trade vanished. When the last emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed in 476 CE, few even noticed. The empire that once ruled continents had already died, not in battle, but in markets, workshops, and mint houses. Its fall was not a moment. It was a process of forgetting what value meant, and perhaps of forgetting humility. Rome's story isn't just ancient history. It's an economic mirror. Empires rise when money represents productivity. They fall when money becomes a tool of illusion. Every time Rome debased its currency, it traded short-term comfort for long-term ruin. Each emperor wanted glory. None wanted restraint. And so, one coin at a time, they melted the foundation of their world. Wealth is not what you hold. It's what you can trust. Rome proved that even gold and silver lose meaning when faith collapses. Inflation is not just numbers. It's the erosion of order. When money fails, law, loyalty, and morality decay with it. No empire, however vast, can escape arithmetic. If spending forever exceeds production, collapse is not a question of if, but when. Today, we don't melt coins, we print digits, but the principle remains the same. When money is created faster than value, collapse whispers on the horizon. Rome believed its destiny was eternal. So does every empire. Until it isn't. The lesson of the denarius is not about ancient silver. It's about human nature. The temptation to believe that we can cheat trust, debt, and time. Because every civilization that forgets the real meaning of money eventually learns the same truth. When value becomes illusion, collapse becomes reality. If this story made you think differently about history and the future, subscribe to The Economics of Collapse. Here, we uncover how wealth, ambition, and human psychology built empires, and how they destroyed them. Because the moment money loses meaning, so does everything it once built.